Hi again. We're going to talk tonight about group diffusings. So it's very much similar to what you did with the one-on-one conversations, but there are some group dynamics that we're going to need to talk about tonight. So again, same rules apply. If you have questions that you want to ask, write those down as they occur to you, and then you can bring them along to the 5:30 to 6 o'clock session on Thursday evening. Also, same rules apply. We will make sure that there are copies of these available after the fact, so you'll be able to have copies of all of the slides that you'll be seeing today. So let's get down to it. So one of the big things to remember is that a good diffusing session can either eliminate the need for a formal debriefing or it will enhance it. So whether you're doing a one-on-one conversation with somebody or whether you're doing a group diffusing, both of those have the same ability to impact people enough that a debriefing can be unnecessary. We're going to talk a little bit about the features and benefits of a group diffusing. One of the things is that they're a little bit more structured, and that's probably mostly due to the fact that there's a group of people rather than just a conversation with one. So it's still a conversation, but you need to be cognizant of the fact that there's more than one person in the room. Or on the phone or on the Zoom call. So you need to be cognizant of that and make sure that you're watching to make sure that people are participating. It's the same calm and conversational approach that you'd use if you were doing a one-on-one. And it is also, again, non-judgmental and non-operational. So this group diffusing is really designed to kind of take the edge off the event. And if there's a large number of people involved, it's good to get everybody together so that they can all hear how everyone else is dealing with it, because that can be helpful to them too. So it's always good to try and hold these as soon after the event as possible. Usually 8 hours is kind of when we would like to hold it, but sometimes it just doesn't work out because you do want as many people as possible to be available for the event. This is going to look similar to the last conversation we had about the three-step process for the one-on-one conversation. So it's quite familiar. Now, in that, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to present the sort of structure of how things are going to transpire. And you're going to stress confidentiality, of course, again. The second part of the three-step process is, again, to explore. And your purpose is the same as with your one-on-one conversations, which is to acknowledge and facilitate understanding. And so this is where the questions come in and where you will likely have to provide a little bit more direction because people aren't necessarily always willing to talk, and all of the people are not always willing to talk. So when you want to ask questions, make sure that you try and include as many as you can. And then the third part of the process is, again, to educate and inform, and you want to help provide ways that they can realize that the situation is normal and how things that they can do, coping strategies they can develop so that they can actually cope with what's happened. The first part of this stabilization process in your introduction is to introduce yourself. Again, it's not an essential component that you know all or even some of the individuals involved. And so you want to, again, make sure that everybody's comfortable. So whether it's a Zoom call or an in-person diffusing, you want to make sure that it's a safe space. It's private, it's quiet, and people are not uncomfortable with where they are. Again, having this at a bar, not a good idea. So there are a few guidelines that are a little bit different. that I'd like to go over, because the first part of this is very much the same. So the CISM team is going to introduce themselves. And if you have a large group, it's always great to have an extra person from the CISM team with you, at least one. And depending on the size of the group, maybe more. The reason is that you want to have eyes on everybody, because you want to be watching people's reactions, their sort of interaction with what's going on, especially when somebody else is talking. So it's always great to have more eyes on the group. So the first thing you're going to do is introduce yourselves, and you want them to introduce themselves. So just in case, for example, sometimes you have somebody who may not be as familiar to the ski patrol who is attending your diffusing. So you want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to identify who they are. And then you're going to present just a few guidelines, we'll call them. So nobody is going to be forced to speak. You don't want to make people talk. You hope they will, but there are people who sometimes would rather absorb the information that's going on around them, and that can be helpful for them. So you want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a listening exercise and a talking exercise. Everyone's experience is important, so it doesn't matter what their role was. Every role played a role. So you want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak and that you allow them to share their experience. In other words, they shouldn't be trying to talk for somebody else. So once again, the purpose is the same. We're not trying to do an operational procedure sort of after action report. So operational, it is non-operational. And so you want to make sure that people understand upfront that this isn't about a critique or some kind of investigation or finding fault or placing blame. This is talking about feelings and how they're feeling and what they're thinking, because they've been through something that was pretty big. Again, you want to stress that confidentiality. Always stress that. So when you're exploring, we've moved on to the next step in the process. And when you're exploring, you want to determine the who, what, when of this story and what happened. So again, it's very similar to the one-on-one conversation, isn't it? Because you're not going to focus on the why and how, because you want to make sure that you're just sticking to what happened. And you have to really practice all those active listening skills we were talking about on Saturday, because especially when you have a larger group, there will be more conversation. There will be more perspectives that get relayed to you. And it's your responsibility as the person who is doing and conducting this diffusing to make sure that everybody gets acknowledged and everybody feels comfortable with what's happened. And as I said a few minutes ago, everybody learns from what somebody else says. So it's not just about what you are saying as one participant, it's about what all of the participants are talking about, because some things that they say will definitely impact others, and they will share those same thoughts and feelings. As with the one-on-one conversations, this step is really about talking about how they feel and what they were thinking and what the impact of this event is or has been or might be. So you're going to be using all of your communication skills again that we worked on Saturday, in terms of being able to paraphrase the content, being able to acknowledge what happened, being able to normalize what they're thinking. And by normalize, as you know, we mean we want them to understand that nothing that they're feeling should be considered as something abnormal. They're having a normal reaction to a very abnormal event. And you need to keep stressing that sometimes, because people do get wrapped up sometimes in thinking that they're the only one feeling this way. And chances are they're not. and making sure that they don't feel that there's something wrong with them, because there isn't. Chances are they're just having a reaction to something that happened to them. And it's the situation that caused that. So in the exploration process, what you want to try and do is to elicit information from the people that are there. So you want to ask questions like, what happened from where you were standing? Who came in first? Who was first in? What was the direct contact with the patient or people who were involved in the incident? And what sticks out in your mind? What do you remember? Was there any one thing that you remember? And if there's anything else, because it may be that they come up with something that you hadn't thought of. And so you definitely want to make sure that you afford the opportunity for them to talk about whatever they want. And so as long as it's related to the situation, right? It's worth mentioning here that the conversation that you will be having with this group of people will sort of take on a life of its own. For example, many situations will elicit the same response from people. So someone will express an emotion or a thought, and someone else will say, "Me too." It's important to acknowledge when people have similar reactions to things. It's important to acknowledge to them. And then, of course, during this exploration period, this is where you're going to be able to assess whether some patrollers may need further assistance. So it may be that somebody who is at this defusing could benefit from just a phone call from you to talk to them one-on-one, because they don't really want to talk in front of everyone else. So understand that that could be part of the further assistance, or it could be that a debriefing may be required depending on how the people are feeling by the end of the session. So the Educate and Inform segment, which is part 3 of the process, is very similar to the other one, the one-on-one conversations that we talked about. You're going to try and help them find ways of coping with what has happened. You're going to want to help them by explaining some of the techniques that they can use. Again, physical exercise, relax, avoiding things that they know will stress them out on top of this, managing their time, eating properly. All of those things are things that you want to make sure that they understand are things that are important to do to help them recover from this. So another way to help them is providing some education around identifying to them what some of the possible reactions might be. So it may be that by telling them, that it's perfectly normal if you don't sleep well tonight, or it's perfectly normal if you're not able to focus on things quite the way you normally can. And so you want to be able to tell them that those are things they might be able to expect. And then you want to normalize any responses that they have and assure them that this is related to the incident. It isn't related to them. And keep sort of harping on the fact that their reactions are a perfectly normal reaction to something that is perfectly out of scope and out of their understanding. Again, you want to provide them the same advice that you would for a one-on-one, and you're providing it to all of them at the same time. It's the same kind of thing. They should want to spend some time with family and friends. They want to eat well, sleep as well as they can. They want to talk about the incident, because talking about it will help. You want to encourage their regular routine and reasonable activities. So we don't want to encourage sending them off to a bar and over drinking, but we do want to encourage them to go out for dinner with friends, or to get in touch with family and make sure that they know what's happened. And you're going to summarize. So as you're doing this conversation, you're going to want to summarize. You're going to want to remember some of the things that came up in the conversation so that you can summarize what happened for them. So you're going to offer some time for question and answer at the end, and then you're going to want to do some follow-up and provide direction on the type of follow-up that you're doing. Things like little brochures that talk about the things that they might expect, that list some do's and don'ts for after a critical incident. You're also going to want to make contact numbers for the CISM team that is either both on the ground now at this particular event or others who they may feel more comfortable talking with. So you're going to want to provide a list of contact numbers for your CISM team in the area. And then you're again going to want to request permission to be able to get in touch with them after this diffusing has taken place, because that will determine for you and your CISM team whether or not you may need a debriefing. Because if people are still having trouble after you've done this diffusing, then it may be necessary to have a debriefing. And as we said at the beginning, a good diffusing can mitigate the need for a debriefing. And so you want to make sure that you're thorough with your diffusing. And then, of course, if there are people there who seem to not be able to move forward through the process, or if they request extra help, you want to, again, make a referral for them and have that information available to them. So thanks very much for sticking with me through my first adventure with video. I hope that you'll bring your questions on Thursday night, and I hope that I've been able to give you a basic overview of what the group diffusing looks like. Thanks very much, and we'll see you Thursday night.